Once again, I'd like to welcome you to ITSE 2309. In this portion, we will look at downloading Oracle Enterprise. We begin by logging on to the Oracle website. As we drill down, we select Database Enterprise 11G. We look at the 64 windows, drilling down. Once again, you log on to the Oracle website. You should have an account established by now. If not, we'll create an account at this point. Please remember, if you lose your password here, you will have issues in the future. We continue with this, and as you download this, I recommend that you save it to a location instead of running it right off the website. You open up the first file and you run the setup execution file. That opens up the item in a DOS window prompt, and that launches the installer process. The installer will kind of audit the machine to make sure everything's working okay. And we create the user ID. On the proxy, I kind of use the uninformed, just take the generic. The other stuff will get more tricky. Once again, this is for one machine, standalone desktop. These items would be important if you have the situation where you have a server client environment. So we start creating a database and toggle through this process. And we're going to use a desktop scenario. We start doing the typical application. It gives you the path location where you're going to separate the actual database from the software that creates the database and the software that installs the database. You give your administrative password that will operate this process. Now, this password is the password we'll be using throughout this scenario, so please do not forget this. Don't be too creative with your password. The machine will look at the prerequisites to make sure everything's working okay. One of the more common items we've come across with this process is that if you have a machine that has a lot of software that auto starts when you boot the machine, Oracle is looking for a path that has less than 1,023 characters. If you have a path that's quite lengthy, that exceeds the 1,023 character limit, you may have to go back in there and edit this to allow Oracle to embed itself in the path. And we continue with this process. We do some more prerequisite checks. The machine is doing an audit to see if it has the appropriate size, memory, swap scenario, operating system. It gives the little tally of everything that happens. And then once the installer has found a home, we launch that process to actually begin the actual creation of the database. And it kind of walks through there, preparing the files, copying the files, downloading the files, checking things out, making sure everything's working okay. Once again, in this process, you're downloading a lot of features with Oracle. As you load these features, if it looks for a certain file and you cannot find it, you will get an error message that it cannot find the file that it's looking for. My experience has been in the standalone download scenarios where you can just play with it on your local machine, that if you hit the continue button all the way through the errors that you will see, eventually it will work. Once we do that, you get to your control panel, open it up into the Oracle 11G that you downloaded. You do have to open up the configuration and migration tools first. Remember, all we've done is download the software. We still haven't built anything with it. So we will open up the database configuration assistant. Through this process, this will walk us through the actual creation of the sample database that you will be using. Once again, we will create the database, custom database, And this kind of toggles through all the items that are being audited and looked at. You will establish a global name for this process, a domain name, an SID name. In this case, I would use ITSE 2309 underscore and your initials. Remember that I have a lot of students, and if I get something, I need to be able to differentiate between all the students. So some kind of identifier at this point would be nice. So underscore either last name or underscore initials would be fine. We continue with the Enterprise Manager as it is building this stuff. You will notice that there's this slide here that has System, Sys, DBSNGT, and System. These are the sub-programs that work with Oracle to manage the process. You have System and Sys and System. These manage the creation, operation, management of this process. I would use the same password for all of them in a standalone item. In the real world, you would have different passwords for these items, and you would have different individuals controlling each of these items for efficiency. So we have a file system here. We keep going through developing more parameters. And this kind of walks through the process of what it's doing, and it's letting you know this process now. At this level, it's not that significant, but later on in the database management, the DBA role, a lot of these items you see here are items that a DBA would be responsible for. Not the database, but the operation of the machine that is maintaining the database. So we keep toggling through these items, except in the default scenario. You get these summaries. In this scenario, I would save this information to some location as reference. Once it's done the audit, it starts creating the process. It's walking through. Depending on each individual machine, this could take anywhere from 10 minutes to an hour. So be patient with it. Yes, take a coffee break. In some areas, since some of the supporting files were not located, you will get some minor messages. My experience has been, once again, standalone downloads, that they do not become an issue later on. Here are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 different accounts that are used to manage and operate Oracle. For the purposes of this class, we'll just use System and Sys. Once you've done that, you get back into your control panel. You select Applications Development, and you check the SQL box. This will launch the PL/SQL, the SQL Plus in the DOS prompt. We are working in a DOS prompt command line environment at this time. We have not loaded any additional software that will help us with entering data. So at this point, you're in a command line scenario. You begin by entering system, and then you enter the password you have chosen. This will give you to SQL. At this point, you establish the shell that you will start building the database that you will be using for the labs. To see if everything's up and running, before we do much else, you can do select table name from all tables, and this will give you a list of all the tables that are available to you. These are mostly the tables that operate the database you're playing with. To do a lot of this stuff, you open up Notepad to be able to do your script, scenario, your loading, and your copy. If you get to the Blackboard site and download the scripts into Notepad, you should be able to open it up. In this scenario, I'm opening up the manufacturer table. We do a copy-paste scenario from the script into the SQL prompt and hit enter to commit. and you should see a complete process where the table was created. You follow the same format with that for the data, entering the data, just copy paste the script into the SQL prompt, and you can start checking things out. In this scenario, we have created the manufact table, we have loaded the manufact table, we have done a select star for manufact that will list the data that was loaded into the table. We continue that with stock table, and that ends this portion. We will look into using SQL Developer to assist with this process. This ends this module.